Haidong! So in this video, we're going to talk about the complex figure eight. So just so you know what I'm talking about, this has, again, so at this point, names kind of just don't mean anything anymore because I've heard this called several different names. I just kind of call it the complex because this is figure eight. What's more complex than that? Oh, that, right? So name aside, so this is the complex figure eight. So the main idea of it is there's going to be one spin forward and two back. So there's going to be actually a few ways we can actually, again, start learning this. And also this is something that has a little bit more tie-in with Gumdo. So again, this may not feel like it is just yet, but having that inversion is actually where you're going to have some sorts of rules. If you take it from form 10, right, so you did bang, bang, spin up, uppercut, what do you do from here? So in the old way, so this is not true anymore, you did something like this, right? Now in the newer way, you're still coming across this way, which makes sense again given the context of what's going on in the form. But just because of the original way, and also you can still use the same concept. So from here, you can still use the idea of using your the back of the sword. So going to have some application. I'm going to take the second version of the way we learned how to do the figure eight and apply it to the complex, right? So before, I mentioned cut off your nose, cut off your butt, right? So from here, nose, butt, butt, nose, butt, butt, right? So notice there's going to be a roll in the shoulder, right? So nose, butt, and almost going to shrug, almost like you're shrugging over this way, right? So this is one way you can learn it. This can take a long time to learn it this way just because it's just mechanically it seems kind of weird, right? But here's another way we can do it. This is a slightly more flashy way of learning it. I kind of wish this is how I learned it, but that's okay. So if you think about, so start almost like you're stabbing the ground, roll above and down, right? So this is just a basic figure eight. So this is a figure eight, right? It's just bigger motion. Like so, right? So this isn't complex yet, right? So big figure eight. So obviously don't do this in combat because you will die. But, so once you do this and you start down low, right? We mentioned coming back down to this position, right? So here, I want you to shrug your shoulder and then roll. Shrug, shrug. Now eventually, once you get used to this combination, you're going to make that tighter, right? So instead of big, roll big, right? You're going to be like, all right, so big, big, and eventually smaller and smaller and smaller until you're here, right? So this is going to be the complex figure eight. Now, what I really like about this combination is there's so much versatility once you learn this to go into other things. So for example, one combination, again, this can be a drill for you guys, is so if you want to start just doing complex figure eights, that's fine. So the idea is starting with going with a forward figure eight and somehow ending up in a backwards figure eight over here in order for you to come back into a forward. There's probably a fancy name for this combination, but the main way to get into it, right? So going from backwards to forwards isn't that bad, so if we actually start with that part, right? So if we're backwards figure eight, all I want to do, so as I'm shifting, I'm going to be here, shift forward, right? So again, backwards, and as it's coming towards my front, I'm just going to cut it down here, right? So backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. Now, how do I get from over there to over there? So it's a nice deep cycle. Well, if we're doing a figure eight here, how do I get into it backwards? I could try and do the same thing, like, it's not as flashy as you might like, and you kind of lose a lot of that torque. So, and because we just learned the complex figure eight, so if we're here, as we're doing the complex, right? So ideally don't do complex that much. You only do complex when you're trying to switch. But for here, as we do our complex part, so figure eight, adding that complex, I'm going to use this twisting motion to go that way and roll backwards, right? And going back in. back in, back in, back in, back in. Stuff like that, right? So this complex figure eight is actually a really good way to turn your direction while maintaining a spin. There's going to be obviously a two-sorted version of this that I'm sure is going to be so much fun because I haven't done it in a long time because I've been out of circuit. But yeah, so this is a really good way for you to engage with the complex figure eight. Now, there's something we're going to be doing in a little bit, as in like probably next video or so. So there was a combination that I did when I was in circuit that I really liked. So more or less it's going to be the complex figure eight. Now if you've learned staying to 5, the put away, right? So if we're here, overhead, spin down, right? So 1, 2, overhead, cut. We're going to do that in a little bit, but the idea is again using the complex figure eight, using the shoulder method to actually be able to snap a strike or snap into a different position, right? So if I'm here, I know someone's being sassy with me over here, I can roll, strike, right? Now we do something sort of like this in Gumdo, especially, so I mentioned before, where we used it with this part in 10, we're kind of using the shoulder to engage before we strike. It's going to be the same way. So if you think about Yedo 2, right, so if we just did the, spin uppercut again before, going forward, 1, 2, bang. Obviously going to spin into the other side. That's the idea. So engaging with your shoulder, your deep shoulder, is going to let you get a little more power with that. But let's take a look at that two-sorted version, because why not? Now once again, deeper stances are better, but the idea is like, all right, so if this is a figure eight in one hand, right, or complex figure eight in one hand, this is the complex figure eight in another, this is something you can do, right? Now obviously, if you were to compete with something like this, most people would do a nice long teidosei and kind of shift, do something like that. Also note that as you can do this, you can kind of roll into a prep position. But yeah, that's going to be yet another kind of thing you can do if you have two swords, and if using two swords is something you'd like to do more in the future. So drills, right? So there's obviously the one where you can just have two swords. First of all, so just get used to this, right? So this has, obviously in combat, so if I'm going on this way, the actual complex part has applications, so using that twist, you go into another part. But in general, actually just combat like this, use it, like, so if I just go at you like this, again, you can just stab me in the face, I'm gonna be gone. But so drills, again, this is gonna be mostly for like an aesthetic or just getting used to, again, the weight and the dexterity of a weapon. So what I'd like you to try is, again, what we just did, right? So 1, 2, try just rolling this way. So 1, 2, as you do your shrug, right? So the shrugging portion, just shrug it up. And the aesthetic is to go on the 45. You could go up. Not nearly as dramatic. Yeah, you can kind of like shrug across this way, right? Obviously use that shrug. Maybe even try going into a false edge. So again, think about like in Insane Suit 6 with the false edge. 1, 2, strike, right? So 1, 2, strike, that way. Yeah, so stuff like that. So try going into the figure eight and use that shrugging motion to, again, power up parts of your form. So if you think again about whenever you do a spin into a chuck gum or a put away, you can usually use some aspect of this, right? So we just talked about the uppercut in Sang Su 10. Again, use a little bit of your shoulder to kind of like throw it into a put away. So just engage that shoulder a little bit more. Again, try to go deep shoulder, try not to do top shoulder. That's also going to power up your cuts. With that, stay humble and keep training. Haidong!